am Katie Ritter.
And I am Justin Thomas, and this is the Restart Recharge podcast, a podcast by coaches for coaches. We bring you the tips and tricks to help you in your everyday work as an instructional technology coach, or whatever they call you in your school district.
So hopefully you're going to leave this episode with us today feeling just a little bit less on your own coaching island.
And guess what, everyone? Welcome into season 2.
Yeah, we're so excited. I can't believe it's a season 2.
I know, right? Already on to season 2. We have an awesome episode here to start off this second season, and it's talking about makerspaces. Look, makerspace in education is not a new concept, yet it still can be an uphill climb to embed a makerspace culture across all content areas and grade levels. In this episode, our very own Megan Whitacre is going to share how she is embracing and making makerspace waves in her district. And before we dive into introducing Megan, we do want to mention that we are offering our coaches camp this summer. It is a 2-day training we're offering on 2 different dates. And this is just a really great session in which you will learn more about working with adult learners, planning and developing high quality professional development, and coaching teachers overall. So you can learn more about the coaches camp that we have coming this summer if you visit our website at forward-edge.net/coach camp. And actually, for our listeners here, if you use the promo code RRCoachcast, you will get $50 off for Coaches Camp. So just a nice little special code for our listeners out there.
Yeah, and we'll link all of this in our show notes too for the podcast.
All right, so now let's introduce Megan Whitacre. Megan taught middle and high school Latin for 6 years before joining the Forward Edge team. Now she serves as a tech coach in a local school district with special focus on learning in a makerspace. A Google certified trainer, Megan is passionate about helping students and teachers learn by doing and accomplish their goals. So welcome, Megan.
Thank you. What an honor to be here for the premiere of season 2.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you.
We're excited for this episode with season 2. Thanks for joining us here, Megan.
Oh, can I throw in a cheesy joke?
Go for it. Why not?
We're ready to make season 2 happen with Megan.
That's a very cheesy joke.
There you get a little funky groove on that.
I need the...
Nice.
I needed the... Did you...
Oh. No. Option 4. There.
There we go. Fourth time's the charm.
Fourth time's the charm. Okay, but anyways, nice joke. Love it. But Megan, why don't you just briefly explain what your experience from day 1 until now as a coach in the makerspace has been?
Okay. So when I joined the Forward Edge team, I was placed into this school that has a makerspace, and it was a makerspace program that really had just barely started in the fall and spring of 2020 before they got shut down for COVID. So there was a little bit of a framework in place. The equipment was already there. It had been introduced to the teachers. Then of course everyone had to go home for a couple months for the pandemic. So that was really all that there was to it.
Yeah, it makes it hard to use a makerspace when you can't be in the space.
Right,
Yes.
right. Though one of our colleagues does have a really great presentation on making virtually. You can still make when you're at home. It's just a different kind of making.
Sure.
So when I walked in, there was really only one ongoing project that was going on, which was they were doing a weekly news broadcast with their high school students. So my job when I walked in the door was first to learn all of this different equipment, learn how to do it, learn how to use it, figure out what its applications were. And we have a huge range of equipment there in the makerspace in the district that I'm in, everything from 3D printers, which you see in every makerspace, to vinyl cutters, to my favorite thing, which is this Glowforge laser cutter engraver thing. Which has just been so much fun to play with, to the green screen and the video editing software. So I had a lot of these things that I really had to take on and figure out how to do, and then start advertising them to the teachers or trying to get some teacher leaders to come in and use that equipment with their classes. So that really meant there were lots of conversations about what exactly is a makerspace. I know you talked about it in March of 2020. Let's refresh ourselves. What is the point of having one? What can this stuff do for you? How does it benefit you and your students? What's it all for? And then in addition, there was a lot of work with students. There was a Makerspace course where they had a couple kids signed up to kind of work as Makerspace aides, and working with them was another great way to kind of get the conversation about Makerspace started in the district, because they would learn how to do things with tools, or they would make things for fun and they would take it back to their teachers, or make something for a project that their teacher had assigned them. And it really kind of spread the word. It's like, oh, this stuff is down here. Oh, when I'm using a Makerspace, I'm not just using it to like build catapults or 3D print keychains. You can use a Makerspace for pretty much anything. One of the people that this was supposed to be a brief thing, but it's not really brief. I apologize.
That's okay.
That's okay. It's hard to make something like this brief.
On Twitter is this guy, Nicholas Provenzano. He's at The Nerdy Teacher on Twitter, and he also has given several talks at ISTE that I was able to tune into. He's really kind of my inspiration for what it means to build a Makerspace. He directs a Makerspace at his school, and one of the things he said in his ISTE talk, and I can't remember if it was 2019 or 2020. One of the things he said was
nobody can remember if it's 2019 or 2020.
Pre that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Megan.
One of the things he says is making is creating something new that wasn't there before, and like that kind of really changed. Just hearing him say that and hearing him talk about the different kind of projects he did really changed my perspective on what a Makerspace is, and being able to drop that in my conversations with all of my teachers really helps shift the perspective. Because when you hear Makerspace, when I heard Makerspace, I think, oh, robots and catapults and 3D printers, right? But really a Makerspace is just a place to make stuff, any stuff that is new, anything that you are creating with your hands. That's what a Makerspace is for. So like, you don't have to shoehorn a Makerspace in your curriculum. A Makerspace is for everyone, because everyone needs to make stuff at some point in all of their classes.
I love that.
Oh.
And I have a couple follow-up questions for you, Megan, because I think that the way that you just summarize that at the very end is so powerful, because I think that so often, teachers kind of have, if they even have an understanding, teachers, principals, other coaches, right? Like, I'll lump myself into this. If we even really understand what a Makerspace is, there's kind of this like stigma or stereotype in our mind that it's meant for like certain types of classes, and there's only certain things that you can do. And how would that apply to me as a former social studies teacher or ELA teacher, or certain content areas maybe struggle initially to figure out like, how would I find a home for my curriculum and my students in here? So will you talk about what was the, and I know you weren't there from the initial introduction of the Makerspace at New Richmond, but I think you've probably been there long enough and have enough background information that you can maybe touch on what was the initial impression of what a Makerspace would be. Were they all on board and super gung-ho, or was there a lot of groundwork that had to be done to kind of bring people along with this idea?
Oh, I would say like they are still not all gung-ho. Like no one, I think it would be very difficult in any district to like have every single person on your staff be totally gung-ho about using the Makerspace, and that's totally understandable, because there's a lot of built up preconceived notions about what a Makerspace is, or what that money is being used for, that that you really kind of have to break down and break through. One of the things that I think is really important when you're having those conversations, or when you're demonstrating what a Makerspace can do, is to really focus on like authentic uses only of the Makerspace. Like, you cannot tell an English teacher, for example, and I keep thinking English teachers because I was a Latin teacher and I feel like they kind of go hand in hand, but you can't tell an English teacher or a Latin teacher, for example, that like it's going to be a really great use of your precious instructional time to come down here and use the 3D printers to model an abstract concept of what you're feeling about this poem. Like it could be, if that's the goal, if that's the learning goal that you have, if you want these kids to be thinking abstractly and connecting art to poetry and all of that, like that would be a really authentic use. But like, usually that's not what you're doing when you're learning poetry. Like, when I was teaching Latin, we were like trying to figure out what subjects and verbs were, like, and I'm sure in English classes it's the same way, and you're not going to have a 3D printer help you with that. So you really want to narrow down what are your learning goals? What are some authentic uses of the Makerspace that can support those learning goals? And like, really, sometimes it's just, hey, I've got a bunch of craft supplies down here. Come use them. Don't go buy your own. I have a ton. I have duct tape. I have scissors. I have cardboard. I have paint. I have anything that you need. And it's here for you and your students. Like, that's what that money is for. That's what this stuff has been. That's why we have bought all this stuff for you and your students. You're doing trifold boards. Come use our stuff. That's why it's here. And as soon as you bring people into the space, connections start to be formed. Kids start to light up. Kids start to see the possibilities sometimes faster than the teachers do. And like, things kind of roll from there.
I love it. And your passion is so contagious, which I love so much. That's kind of on the theme of just bring them and they will make the connections. And I think part of that is maybe your passion.
Build it, they will come.
Yeah.
It's all
but
mine.
I think that kind of goes into like the next question that I had as you were kind of giving that introduction of, you know, what a makerspace is. And then even more so with what you just said. And that is, I'd love if you could talk about, because I think so often I know, like when I've been asked about this in years past, like, hey, we want to start a makerspace, and like naturally you're the tech coach, so help us do it. And I'm like, I have literally zero experience with any of those things, because that's not the same thing as knowing how to use Google tools for instruction. And so I think that from that standpoint, I think very often tech coaches and people who kind of serve that niche for schools are turned to for support to start this process from ground zero. And that maybe that's even the barrier sometimes, because those people get a little held up in their own self-doubt and kind of imposter syndrome. So
For sure.
I'd love if you could talk about, you know, like what was your experience with all of this prior to kind of being thrown in to run the lab or run their makerspace?
Well, I think I probably first got started with maker stuff a long time ago. Early on in my career, I had gotten a position of a tech coach at a school district, and because I was the tech coach, exactly like you said, they were like, oh, here's a robotics team, like you're a techie person, you should be in charge of that. And I was like, the last time I wrote code was in college, but okay. So that kind of made me have to really just dive in and do it. One of the things I learned from that was like, you, especially in a maker situation, especially when you're doing something crazy, you never have to know all of the answers. In fact, the whole point of this kind of space and this kind of experience is that you, the teacher, don't know all the answers, is that you are letting your students kind of figure it out together, that you are there helping them research, that you are there making sure everything is safe, but also being willing to try stuff and saying, oh, did you find that on Google? That seems like a cool idea. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. What's the worst that could happen? Again, you want to be safe, you want to be careful with your expensive equipment, but you can use your adult common sense there, and anybody has some adult common sense about that. Everything else, like, you just have to kind of dive in and start trying things and see what you can find online. So when I was thrown into this coaching robotics team, I knew literally nothing about robotics. And I spent a lot of that first year like saying, well, I don't know, kids, like, why don't you try it and see what happens? And that has really now become my mantra. Anytime I don't know something, it's, hey, I don't know, why don't you try it and see what happens? And then together we try a bunch of things, and then slowly your knowledge just builds up. Basically, the point is, like, everyone feels intimidated by makerspaces. And I think that goes back to those preconceived notions about makerspaces being for STEM and makerspaces being for engineering, which they are, but they're also for everything. And everyone can be a maker. Everybody makes something. Even if you feel like you don't make things with laser cutters, you probably make things with pancake batter, or maybe you make things with knitting needles, or maybe you make things with a needle and thread. Like, everyone makes something, and all of those skills are transferable because they all come with the attitude of, if I don't know how to do this, I'm going to find out how to do it. I'm going to try things and I'm going to see what happens.
I love that. And sorry, last question from me, but kind of building on that kind of like maybe our own mental block where we can maybe get in our own way of feeling like we're not prepared, or, you know, we can't guide people because we haven't done it ourselves before. Are there other challenges or barriers that you've encountered to actually like getting the makerspace off the ground and running, kind of big things that you'd point out?
I would say in our makerspace, one of our biggest challenges is just making sure there aren't any conflicts on our equipment schedules.
That's a good problem to have.
You're booked up.
Yeah.
Reserve
if
early.
you're trying to start a makerspace, have a really clear schedule is my first piece of advice. My second thing is like, I think that all teachers, including myself, probably especially myself, have a need to control everything in the situation. I know that I am a perfectionist and I want to control every single outcome. You have to really, if you're going to start embracing maker culture, if you're going to start getting into a makerspace, you really have to learn to let go of that control. Like, all of these kids are going to do a project, and the results of that project may not end up as what your vision was when you first designed it to them. And that is okay, because it's not about the product, it's about the process that they went through making it. And like, maybe their product is like really interesting and feels a need that they saw and you didn't anyway, right? You really have to start to relinquish control and let them start to explore on their own. They say, and gets said a lot at like ed tech conferences, so I don't know who said it, but they say the person who does the work is the person who's doing the learning. And so that is all the more true in a makerspace. And so that is why you really have to just let go and let God, maybe, but let go.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoy that, the fact of just creating something, and maybe it doesn't end the way that you thought it would, but you're still learning a process, right?
Like every art project I ever had in high school.
Exactly. And maybe you learned that painting was not for you, but you learned something in that
Literally
process.
no medium of art was for me.
Right. It's like you think you're drawing a picture of a horse, and then someone comes over and is like, that's a really awesome seal you got going on there. You're like, sure, yep, we'll go with it.
That was me.
I'm not very artistic myself. So, but we'll get to some of these high points, these projects that went really well, and what made some awesome projects and waves in the Makerspace after we take a moment break from our sponsor. Calling all technology coaches. Join Fort Edge this summer for a 2-day coaches camp packed with high-quality professional development exclusively for you. Attendees will work with like-minded coaches on creating strategies for teacher relationships, executing coaching cycles, and building a culture of coaching and tech integration within their school or district. There are 2 opportunities to attend Coaches Camp this summer. Join us either June 25 and 26 in New Orleans prior to ISTE 2022, or in Cincinnati on July 28 and 29. Please visit forward-edge.net/coachcamp to reserve your spot today. Welcome back to the Restart Recharge podcast. We are here for season 2, episode 1. We have Megan Whitacre joining us. As always, Katie Ritter, Justin Thomas for the Restart Recharge podcast. And we were talking about Makerspaces and getting things started here for season 2. Since it is the end of January, we thought that, maybe there are some teachers that you got a semester under your belt. You're looking for something a little bit newer to try out. So we got Megan on here talking about the Makerspace. And before we went to break, we were kind of alluding to the fact we're going to talk about some high points, some projects that went really well, the projects that made waves for the Makerspace. And Megan, I'm sure you have a whole collection of some projects that were just amazing when they came to the finished product.
Yeah. Yes, I have a lot of really great projects, and it was really exciting to see these projects come together at the end of last year and the beginning of this year, because because
there's too many of them, right?
Pardon me, because I was intimidated by building a makerspace, and to see these happen, it was just really, really wonderful to see what the kids could pull off. So I have to mention, I would be remiss if I did not mention their weekly broadcast. That was the one ongoing project that I walked into. That was the one that was kind of dropped in my lap. And that is a really exciting project, because it is run by the public speaking teacher, and she has gone from last year, I think she had like 8 or 9 kids sign up for it. She's gone to like 30 something kids signed up, so it's split into 2 class periods. She has a group of experts that are going to take over and kind of be producers of the whole episodes. Next semester, she's got apprentices coming in, and she's got several groups. They're not all producing an episode every week, and they have some time to make some really quality content. It's really impressive how much that has grown. And I think that it is because the kids really have been able to kind of unleash their creativity on that. So every week they make like a 10 to 12 minute news broadcast. And so they do the things you always do, like the weekly announcements and the local news and that sort of thing. But then they also like channel their inner YouTube stars and make these crazy funny segments to try to cheer everybody up at the end of every week. And so they'll do things from like run around and make people finish the lyric to this past week, because it was Christmas, they like wrapped up presents so that they looked like something they were not, which I guess is a TikTok trend. I don't know. But then they like gave these presents to people and made them unwrap them on camera, and it was hysterical. It was really funny. So that project is very, very cool because it's gone from like a really teacher-led thing with that small group of students to this huge organization. And like, as we go every week, it gets more and more and more student-led. So by next semester, when she has these students who have already taken the class once, they're coming back to take it a second time, they're going to be like executive producers of the whole show, and they're going to run it. They do all of the editing, they do all of the planning, they do all of the script writing. It's like a super cool from the bottom complete production experience, which is really neat for these kids to be having.
And this,
I mean, the whole community. So like they post it on Twitter, and everybody in the village watches it, and it's really neat.
Oh, that's awesome. Now this is the equipment that they use is, I mean, this is what news channels are using, right? So they could take what their skills are that they're learning here in high school and implement that in a TV station right off the bat, right?
Oh, absolutely. We use a pretty advanced editing software. We use a teleprompter. They are public speaking kids, so they all practice speaking on the teleprompter and being on camera and that sort of thing. They do some really crazy editing with our green screen. I had a kid for Halloween. He wanted to learn how to like decapitate someone on camera and then get the head to like roll across the camera while it's making funny faces. It was very like Monty Python-esque. I don't really know. Again, he thought it was hilarious. I was like, you do you. So we did that. So we learned how to do it with the green screen, and you learn how to animate his little head rolling across the screen. And it was just like, that is a really impressive skill that you would really never learn except for on your own time. And now you can take it with him for forever.
Megan, I feel like you have the most impressive set of skills in part because of working in
like,
this makerspace.
But like, it's not. It's a kid says, I want to do this, and I say, cool, let's figure out how. I hearken it back to like, I don't know. I was always in the theater as a kid, and so it's kind of like an improv skill, right?
Yes, and.
Yes, exactly. It's yes, and. A kid says, hey, I want to animate my head being decapitated. And I say, yes, and what if you made funny faces the whole time and we turned it black and white and then we played scary music behind it? Let's see how we make this happen.
You got a whole Halloween TV special right there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I love that so much. Cool. What if we all had a yes, and attitude towards our kiddos and our teachers when they wanted to try something? That is awesome. Okay, I'm gonna throw just a curveball, kind of building on Justin's question, but what's maybe like the most bizarre or unexpected maybe project that has come from working with a teacher?
Very good question. Well, the thing I never expected to do, but turned out to be extremely fun, was at the end of last year. We live in Cincinnati, and the Cincinnati area was going to have the cicada outbreak, right? Outbreak. I don't think that's the right word, but
depending on where you were.
And so the science teacher said to me, like, I want my kids to make a museum about the cicadas, so we can educate the community about the cicadas, and these exhibits all have to be interactive, so that, like, you know, we're going to invite the middle schoolers over and they'll have something to do. And I was like, yes. Awesome. What a cool project. Super neat. Expecting it to be like, you know, we're going to have some videos and we're going to have some cicada models and maybe we'll use some robotics to make things move and that sort of thing, right? Which we did. We did all of that. It was amazing. We also built some interactive posters that had like buttons and stuff where you could press it and it would like tell you a cicada fact. And it was just very like children's museum-esque. Very cool. That was done with a Raspberry Pi. Just because I want to keep dropping in equipment that we are using and that you could use in your makerspace. Yeah. But the weirdest thing was this kid came up to me and she said, okay, so for this project, I want to make like a scale where when you step on it, it tells you how many cicadas you would weigh.
Okay.
And I said, I have literally no idea how to do that. And she said, me neither. And then we said, okay, let's figure it out. So we got an Arduino. We looked up a bunch of tutorials online. I ordered some like weight sensing plates, and we tried to connect it all together. And eventually it did not work. It was not a successful project. So then, like, before the project was due, we had to revamp, and we turned it into a cicada calculator. So you could type in your weight and it would tell you how many cicadas that would be. Yeah, but it was so cool because it was so absurd and out there. Like, I think maybe they have something like that at the zoo, but like for a kid to say, hey, I want to build that, that's something I can do. Like, that was amazing.
Well, what a good lesson of like how to pivot, and this isn't going to work, but okay, what else can we do with what we've got here?
Yes.
Too?
My due date is coming up. Like, I didn't achieve my original goal. How can I get the same message across? And that was also extremely cool.
Yeah. I think I would prefer a calculator so I could lie about the input just a little bit. Okay, awesome. So, so talk a little bit about, I think you kind of have, but, we haven't necessarily asked you this directly. So maybe for any doubters out there, how has a makerspace, like how does it impact education and instruction from your perspective?
I think that the biggest benefits of a makerspace is that when you have a makerspace in the building, when you bring people and kids especially into the makerspace, they just by virtue of using the equipment and starting to build things there, they start to develop a maker mindset. And that is the most important thing. That is one of those things that I think everyone should develop a maker mindset, especially all of our students should develop a maker mindset, because it's one of those things that makes you resilient, and it makes you persistent, and it makes you ready for any challenges that you are going to face in the future. Now, because I was waiting for you guys to ask me this question, I did look up a quote that describes what a maker mindset is. I don't know if you want me to read it.
Go for it.
Okay, this is from John Spencer, another person who I really I follow a lot, especially when I was starting my makerspace experience. John Spencer was a big person who influenced everything I'm doing there. So he is the author of a book called The Launch Cycle, which is specifically about teaching design thinking, which is basically a maker mindset. But he also writes several books about innovation and making and that sort of stuff. So great person. He's got a great blog too. So he says, when kids embrace a maker mindset, they learn to think divergently and solve problems by connecting seemingly disconnected ideas. They learn to take creative risks and try new things. They learn to embrace iterative thinking as they move through the creative process. In the process, they experience failure and develop a growth mindset. They become systems thinkers who can navigate complexity, but also they become hackers and rebels who change the world. In other words, they become innovators.
Love that.
Yeah. So that is what I think a makerspace is important, is because it builds these skills into these students. And those are things that are not directly connected to a curriculum, but are also connected to every single curriculum. They are things that are not like explicit learning goals, but also like, isn't that who you want to take over our future? Like, when you think about that description, the people who are going to be hackers and rebels, but also be able to navigate complexity, but also can experience failure and bounce back. Like, isn't that who you want leading our country and our world 20 years from now? Like, that is who I personally feel we should be producing as educators. And I think that a makerspace is a great way, not the only way, but a great way to do it.
Megan, I love it so much. Who would have thought I got the goosies and almost cry on episode 1 of season 2? So we're sold. We're believers.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm a coach at a school that doesn't have a makerspace, right? I still feel, I know that a lot of schools that we work with don't have a makerspace. They do not have a dedicated space, and they don't have a lot of the equipment that you've even talked about to use outside of maybe a specific course, right? Like, it's not readily available for our science teachers to come down, or our English teachers to come down, or whomever to come down. So what would you tell coaches who, whether it was before this podcast or you are just so inspiring that they are on board now to make a makerspace happen in their school, what do you say to them if they don't have that formal space yet?
You do not need a makerspace to really do making. You can start doing maker type activities and start building a maker mindset in your students with a bunch of construction paper and duct tape. Like you can do making with very minimal materials. Just start collecting. Like I here at my house, I collect my paper towel rolls and my old newsprint, and I bring that in, and like that's all you really need, stuff that kids can actually start to construct with. I think that a makerspace becomes more and more powerful when you actually have that equipment and kids can get exposed to that crazy stuff, because it kind of lights a fire in them that is much more difficult to light with construction paper. But like, you cannot let that hold you back, because as long as you ask them to write the right questions and prompt them to start putting things together with their hands and not just writing things down, like that is going to really start them down the hill of making.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Wow. I mean, I don't know if that was intended to be one of your 3 tips or not, but that was spot on for a good tip. It was actually not. Well, bonus tip for our folks out there. Well, we do like to finish our segments with 3 tips. So you got a bonus one there from Megan, but Megan, what other tips do you have for using a makerspace if you're a coach out there? Whether it's someone that's getting started, someone that is already in it and looking for new ideas, what you got?
So the 2, I mean, I think I've kind of alluded to all 3 of these already. So the first 2 are authentic uses only. If you have a makerspace, or if you're trying to start making, start a maker culture in your school district, do not try to shoehorn it into a curriculum. The history teacher is never going to use that 3D printer if you are forcing something to happen. It's also important to remember that not every makerspace project has to be a huge, gigantic undertaking. Like sometimes the best design thinking opportunities, sometimes the best making happens when a class is working on like something totally different, but they just happen to be down there using the supplies, and a kid says, oh, hey, I really wish this would look like so-and-so. And we have to figure out how to bring that vision to life. So like, it doesn't have to be big. It can just be using those craft supplies, and it's going to start something. So make sure your uses are authentic. That's tip 1. Tip 2 is burn the candle from both ends. So work with your teachers, work with your students, work with both. As much as you can, have conversations with literally every single person who walks in the door with your makerspace about the benefit of making. As much as you can, try to get every single person who walks in the door have their hands on some equipment or some materials or something. That is going to start spreading your makerspace faster than really you can imagine. Those spontaneous conversations are more powerful than anything. So also like a makerspace with an open door that people can walk into, a makerspace in a location that's easy to find, hugely, hugely helpful. My last tip, big tip, I said it at the beginning, I said it in the middle, I'm going to say it again. You personally, as the coach, cannot be afraid of making. You have to start calling yourself a maker. You have to start doing your own making. You have to start diving in and trying to learn all of these things around you. You don't have to be an expert at anything at all, but you have to call yourself a maker, and you have to say, I am someone who makes. That helps your students identify themselves as makers. That helps people realize that anybody can be a maker, and then that helps that maker mindset spread and builds those kids that we really want in our future.
I love that. Thank
So
you.
nicely
Those were
summed
such
up.
good tips.
I really do like that last one, that you need to have that confidence. And I think that's something that you can certainly insert in yourself, but also to insert into the kids. That's going to be important for them throughout anything that they do, whether it's making in the makerspace or just making in the world, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Megan, it has been a joyous ride we've had here with you on our Makerspace.
I know. I'm going to go home and make something I started. I don't know what, but I'm feeling inspired now.
You're getting after those art projects again, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
Oh, no, not that. We're not doing
Only
that then. Awesome. Well, Megan, thank you for joining us here for episode 1, the honor bestowed upon you.
Woo, episode 1. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And make sure you tune in next time. We're going to have our teammate Mark Gumm talking about student-centered coaching programs coming up. So that's going to be a really good conversation with Mark, talking about how he's really using the students in the coaching program to work with them and really exceed some awesome things down there.
Absolutely. So be sure to subscribe to Restart Recharge wherever you listen to podcasts. We would also love, if you wouldn't mind, now that we're on to season 2, if you wouldn't mind, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can scroll all the way down and give us a rating and review. That just helps other people find us, figure out what we're about, and listen as well if you find this valuable as a coach. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at RRCoachCast.
And I think that we're pretty friendly people, and our social media team is pretty friendly people. And I think that if you are so inclined, you should feel free to reach out and talk to us. Let us know what topics that you are interested in, and we just might discuss them here on the RR Coachcast.
Absolutely. And with that, press the restart button.
Recharge your coaching batteries and leave feeling equipped and inspired to coach fearlessly with the Restart Recharge podcast.
A Tech Coach Collective. No, it tells us we're recording.